we are going to talk about some winners and losers on the defensive side of the ball. And hopefully your brain's not completely fried because, again, this did happen on Friday, 72 hours ago for you, which feels like 600 hours in Indianapolis time because you don't get any sleep and you're watching 200 prospects and you're just trying to function. So let's start with your pass rushers. Give me a winner right there.
It's tough to give you one winner because the group as a whole really excelled. Dallas Turner, the top prospect at the position, I thought really held his own. Running the 40-yard dash in 4.4 seconds, checked every box you needed him to check. I will say that Jared Verse, the pass rusher from Florida State, probably helped himself the most in my eyes because when you watch his tape, he's a player that wins with power, started to show his best football down the stretch there with the Seminoles, and then to come to Indianapolis and test the way that he did, I thought was fantastic. He had a 4.58 second 40-yard dash, 35-inch vertical jump. So he was testing very well. 7.31 second three-cone drill, which, measures your ability to change direction, your agility, things of that nature. You wanted to see that a little bit lower. But for me, knowing that he was a rusher built on power, and then seeing those athletic numbers gave me a little bit more confidence in projecting him to the next level.
Now, when you think of someone as a winner, did you walk into the combine thinking, hey, Jared Verse is maybe a top 25 pick? Now he feels like a top 20 or top 15 pick? Or do you still feel similar, but you won't be surprised if he's taken higher than you think now?
Coming into the draft, I thought he was probably in that 20 range. Coming out of the combine, rather, I think he's very much in the mix for top 10. I think he could be the first edge rusher off the board. I don't necessarily see it that way, but I do believe that some teams will. And that's the difference of, millions of dollars over the course of a 5-year contract. So in that sense, he not only helped himself from, a potential standpoint, but he helped himself financially as well. So he was definitely one of the big winners. Chop Robinson from Penn State, another one of those guys. Leatu Latu, I think, we may talk about it at some point, but, had a fairly solid workout.
All right, let's go to linebackers. And I'm just going to spoil it because I think one of your winners is Payton Wilson, which I hope for your sake is one of your winners because Brinson will literally hunt you down, shave you head, tie you up, and put you in a closet if you do not have Payton Wilson as a winner because that's his favorite college player of all time. Is Payton Wilson one of your winners at linebacker?
I'll be honest with you, there was a part of me that thought about not mentioning Payton Wilson just to spite Brinson when he listened back to this. To not have an NC State Wolfpack linebacker mentioned on his podcast would be kind of funny, but I can't do it. I mean, it would just be a disservice to the player. He tested so well. Had a make sure I got my notes here, 4.43 second 40-yard dash, 34.5-inch vertical jump. So he tested fast. He tested explosive. This is a player that had 2 torn ACLs when he was at NC State. He had a significant shoulder injury, but that was a couple of years ago. So now he's got a couple of years where he has shown that he can stay healthy, and it gives you a little bit more confidence in him possibly holding up in the NFL. I will say that the medical check is going to be very important for him, but really happy to see a player that has been through so much adversity through his college career now come to this stage, excel, and really help himself financially.
Yeah, and it's interesting with linebackers because of everything they're asked to do. They're playing side to side. You see them drop back in coverage now, coming up to stop the run. They're doing everything. And so for Payton Wilson to kind of come out and show his athleticism, I mean, his 4.4340, I think the second fastest linebacker was 4.47 in the 40. So you're talking about, and then no one else was faster than 4.5. So we're talking about, he kind of blew away the field there. Not that the 40 is an end all be all for linebackers, but very interesting there. And the thing is, we're talking about edge rushers and how Jared Verse might be a top 15, top 10 pick now. And the top guys on that list are all first rounders. When you're talking about the best linebacker, they're more day 2 guys, right? Like they're likely to be drafted on day 2 versus day 1.
Yeah, I've heard a little bit of buzz that Texas A&M's Edgerrin Cooper could get into the first round. I don't think he's going to go quite that high, although he is my top-rated linebacker. But again, that's why it was so important for Wilson to test well, because once you get past Cooper, it is kind of a cluster there at the position. You got Michigan's Junior Colson. You've got Trevin Wallace from Kentucky really helped himself. So there's like a small group of players that are in that next tier. And I think Wilson, certainly asserted himself in that group. So when you're trying to separate these players from one another, he's somebody that helped himself, and that could, be the difference in 20 selections in the draft.
All right, let's move on to cornerbacks, which I'm happily moving on to because literally nothing makes me happier than life than seeing a player from the Mid-American Conference just go in. Yeah, you're in Mac country. And as a Mac guy, I think there was a Mac guy who did pretty well at the combine and maybe even helped the stock.
I would go a step farther. I think Quinyon Mitchell, the cornerback from Toledo, has helped himself throughout this entire draft process. Not even just the week in Indianapolis. I mean, you go back to the Senior Bowl and what he was able to show against a higher level of competition. That was one of the big concerns about him, because coming from the MAC, he'd only played a couple of games against Power Five competition. So how would he fare against that level of competition at the Senior Bowl? He did very well. He more than held his own. He's got 6 interceptions over the past 2 years, somebody that had great ball production, but then to come to Indianapolis and test as well as he did, 4 points, 3.3 second in the 40-yard dash, 38 vertical jump. Again, just checked all of the boxes that you would want to see from a number one cornerback in the NFL. So when you're looking at that top cornerback in this draft class, Alabama's Terrion Arnold is in that conversation, but there's no question that Mitchell is surging upwards after what he did in Indianapolis.
And I mean, he could be a top 10 pick theoretically, right? It feels like he's looked that good over the past month or so.
Yeah, he absolutely could. I think over the course of this podcast, we've probably said about 20 players could be top 10 picks at this point in time, but Mitchell is one of them. You've got a couple of edge rushers that could get in there. You've got 3 wide receivers that could get in there. You got 3 to 4 quarterbacks. So there's only so many spots that can be top 10 selections. But in terms of that caliber of player, I do think Mitchell is certainly on the border of being top 10 overall pick worthy.
It is crazy with the defensive players, how it does feel like this is going to be a totally offensive draft in the sense of offensive linemen and receivers are going to be 24 picks in the first round. Quarterbacks are going to be 4, and then spread. And I'm exaggerating with offensive line receivers, but it feels like they're going to fill up a good chunk of that first round. All right. Was there anyone on the defensive side of the ball who left you wanting a little more? Maybe you weren't as impressed with as you thought you would be.
So for me personally, Austin Booker, the edge rusher from Kansas, is one that I expected more of. On tape, I thought he was going to be, 250 pounds plus, measured 240 pounds in Indianapolis. Still a relatively young player. He is just got 1 year of playing experience essentially since transferring from Michigan. A player that has great length, was used situationally for the Jayhawks. I expected him to do a little bit more. He ran, I believe, a 4.79 40-yard dash at the combine. Again, I thought it would be a little bit quicker. So I think for me personally, I expected to see more. I wanted to see more, but I didn't. I know Leatu Latu from UCLA is one that is often mentioned in this context from people. I didn't come into this thinking that he was a phenomenal athlete. I thought he was a good athlete, and I think he showed that. One of the finer technicians in this draft class, incredibly productive player that can win at the point of attack with a couple of different moves. I think he's still in that 15 to 20 range when it's all said and done in this draft class. But I would say Booker, for me personally, was one that I was disappointed by.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously you have the thing about if you do struggle at the combines, you still have your pro day. There's still plenty of time for you to kind of get your stock back up. So I don't think too many players panic. But you definitely don't want to leave that because you do have all 32 teams there kind of watching you.